Hey folks, you are listening to episode 13 of the Deeply Devoted Podcast, a ministry of the E-Free Church of Bemidji, Minnesota. My name is Eric, and I am one of the pastors on staff here at E-Free Bemidji. And this week on the podcast, I've got not one, but two special guests with me. I've invited Tayler Borders and Ian Trosen, our church's two co-chair choir directors, to chat with me about this ministry here at our church, the ministry of music. And now, just to let you know, because of my really not very sophisticated recording equipment, I can only record one conversation at a time. So I'm going to start with Tayler, and then I'll sit down with Ian, and we'll splice these together. So Tayler, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
This will be fun. We're going to chat about choir. We're going to get to know you. We're going to talk about all kinds of things here. But let's start just, Tayler, by getting to know you. How long have you been here at E-Free Bemidji? And what brought you to the Bemidji area?
I'd say probably around, like 3-4 years I've been coming here now.
That sounds about right.
Something around there.
Yeah.
The reason I came up to Bemidji specifically, I came to be a music performance major at BSU.
Okay.
So I was at the university for a long time there. It was kind of hard to find a good place for me to go to church because I was very confused as to where to go. And I lived at the Lutheran Campus Center for a year and did that. And so I was basically required to go there. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I also was the music intern over at Calvary Lutheran for a little bit, obviously as a part of being at BSU.
Right.
But I was very excited when I could come here. Yeah. So it was nice to see some truth being spoken and things that I actually agreed with doctrinally, and because there were some differences that I was very vocal about in those other places.
Okay. So. Well, if memory serves me right, yeah, that probably sounds right. Maybe it's 4 or so years ago. I have this memory, Tayler, of you walking into a Sunday school class that I was teaching, and this very well-dressed young man and his wife walked into this class as new folks to our church, and I think that's when I first met you and had a good first impression. Not just your attire, but just even participating in the class. And so it's been good to kind of get to know you and your wife Rissa, and you guys have plugged in a lot of different ways, not just in the music ministry here. I know you guys have worked with our students and have found a good fit here, but we are talking a little bit about music ministry today. So Tayler, I'm kind of curious talk about your love for music and how did the Lord lead you to pursue music in your life?
Sure. So music for me has always been a big part of my life. I've always found it to be inspiring. In some sense, to put it as far as like musicals go, let's say, in life, there are certain moments where there's so much emotion, so much behind everything, that music's the only accurate way to communicate it. So in a musical, that's when they break into song. So, are you
going to do that for us?
We're not doing that right now, but like one big thing is like in High School Musical, for instance, with the cafeteria scene where they're talking about the status quo of everything. They start singing because they start going, oh, this is just how it is. Why do we have to be in these boxes, right? So in that sense, I've always been very creative, and I wanted to express myself, and I found a lot of expression in music. And when I had a lot of hurt or pain, as any angsty teenager or anything anybody has, you find that outlet there, because we're allowed to, in that space, actually express things that are so much deeper in almost a distancing way.
Yeah.
So like it's so intimate to be talking to somebody about your hurts and your pains and what inspires you even. It's very naked feeling. Whereas if you're actually singing and you're, oh, this person identifies with me or this identifies with me. That's a way you can kind of escape into that. And I think God just kind of used that in my life where I started getting almost obsessed with it. And I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, and I had a moment where I broke my knee. If you had $1 for every time any athletes ever told you that, but it gave me an excuse to dive more into that.
Okay.
So, and that was my sophomore year. So my junior year, I tried football again. Didn't really work out. I got into the basically the first part of the season. We were going to play game 1, and during practice, I blew my knee out again. So it was pretty bad. So I had to find a different way to deal with that. And then I just didn't go out for it. My senior year, we actually started doing musicals at the high school. So I started doing more acting and stuff like that. So it's almost like God was like, no, you're not going to do this. You're going to do this.
You're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to move you from one group to the next.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And
different
I mean,
skill set.
I always enjoyed it, but I always was like, oh, well, why would you do that? That's weird to be interested in just, you should do the more manly things, as it were. But it gave me an excuse to dive into that. So
Okay. And how have you seen maybe just your love of music, your passion for music, even sort of intersect with your faith in Christ over the years?
Sure. That's a difficult question. I guess in some sense, I've kind of come to have a very intellectual relationship with God.
Yes. Taylor, that's a different podcast episode. We're going to talk about apologetics.
Yes. But it's interesting because that's the music thing also because of my wanting to understand God in an intellectual sense. To people who understand what music is, it is very intellectual. It is very, very intellectual. I mean, you want to dive into the music theory of everything. It's kind of amazing how everything comes together.
Yeah.
And so as I started to understand that more, you start to see how intricate God is in his plans. And to give us music in the capacity that it can be used is very amazing. And to sit there and appreciate the tapestry and this is just one section of God's creation, right? Everything's vibrating, everything's doing, emitting sound in some sense. And on the grand scheme of things, there's this grand symphony currently happening all the time, all around us. And we get to take this and organize it as image bearers of God and organize it in a sense to express to him our love and our admiration. And that's really, really cool to have the opportunity to do that. So yeah.
So maybe there is an apologetics angle there.
There is somehow
that argument for the fine tuning of the universe or something like that would intersect with music theory. Hey, maybe that's your next book or something you can write.
There's a dissertation in that.
There you go. Well, I want to talk a little bit about your role here with our choir here. But first of all, for our folks, we know that last year, our longtime, well-loved choir director, Ken Wold, retired from that role of choir director here at our church. And we got to have a big celebration and honor him in that. But I'm curious, you had some years under Mr. Wold as a member of the choir. Taylor, what are some of the things that you learned from Ken Wold and or some of the things that you really just appreciated about him while you were under his leadership?
He wanted to create a space for everybody. And in some senses, he wanted to shove everybody into that space. Anybody who's had a conversation with Ken, I think, could relate to some degree that he tried to recruit you to the choir.
Yes. Yeah.
But he had such an openness to that and wanted to create that opportunity for people to sing. And it's not so much of, oh, well, you are the most beautiful singer in the congregation, therefore you're in the choir. We're all in the choir, and we have varying skill levels, varying backgrounds, and to, like I said, have that space where that's okay. Contrasting that to being in a collegiate level choir where everything's all about perfection and doing all that kind of stuff. It's a very different environment.
Yeah.
One where, basically you'll sit there and choir director is going to sit there and plunk out something. All right, who wants to do the solo right now? All right, you go. No, okay, that didn't work. Now you go. And just not really feeling like comfortable in the environment, unless you were perfect. That's very different than in our choir, where it's all about it. There is always an opportunity to sing. You're welcome, and we want to help everybody in the choir express themselves in the best way possible. So is there going to be moments where you stop and you go, oh, well, we need to tune this or do XYZ thing? Sure. But it's all in love, and it's all directed toward God. That was a big thing with Ken. Everything is always very directed in that direction. So that way we don't lose the point. Yeah. That
it really is an act of worship. Yeah. And just even that sense of community among the members of the choir.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. But now you have stepped into this role of co-choir director, you and Ian Trosen, and we'll talk to Ian here as well, hopefully, and get his take on some of these things. But Tayler, what is your vision for the choir ministry here as you step into this role?
Well, I would like it to be bigger, in the sense that there are some things that just aren't possible unless it is bigger.
Okay.
Just certain pieces you can't do without the voices.
Right.
You can't do a lot of the stuff that we do have is 4-voice type harmony. I'd like to be able to do 8 at some point, basically take all 4 sections and divide those in half. Because you get to see that intricacy there. Yeah. You get to challenge the choir a little bit, and the congregation gets to hear something kind of fun in that sense. I'd really just like to see, I remember you and I were having a conversation earlier last week about just people don't get the ability to sing in a group very often.
Right.
And, even tying back to that ministry of music theory and stuff like that, you really, until you've sang a completely in tune chord with other people, you've never felt anything like that ever. And I want to give that to as many people as possible. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting just based off of the physics of it. I won't go too into the physics of it, but the gist of it is how chords work, physically speaking, is there's this thing called the harmonic series, where essentially there's a fundamental pitch. And then within that fundamental pitch, there are pitches above it and pitches below it. That would be subharmonics. There's some really nerdy stuff about that. We don't need to talk about that. But essentially, if you strike a chord, if you have a fundamental pitch, that pitch has all the other pitches above it inside of it. So when you're building up chords and you lock in completely with that, you actually completely align yourself with that harmonic series, which makes the whole room vibrate. And you can actually hear the other pitches above it, and you hear other harmonics, and it creates a much larger, fuller sound. when you do that. So not only do you feel that when you're in the choir, but you also feel that in the room, and the whole room starts to vibrate. It's very, very cool. I would love to see that. I would love to see that in a sense, because it's just so wonderful. It really, like, until you've experienced it before, it's unlike anything else. And we've done it in rehearsal, and I would love to see that on Sundays, and be able to. And that's just on the harmony standpoint. That's not even on all the shaping of how you create a phrase and all that kind of stuff. So
right.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Well, as you're talking about growing the ministry of the choir, having more and more people involved there, we do tend to have our choir sing at our 8:30 traditional service. I think I already know the answer to this, but would you say really choir is really just for those that prefer that traditional service, or can we recruit from those that come to our more contemporary service? And how might someone that says, my preferred style is a little bit more contemporary, what place would I have in a choral group in a more traditional choir?
Sure. So I love contemporary music. I listen to it all the time. I will say, though, the majority of the stuff I listen to is like 1800s, because I'm weird. I'm a weirdo.
So not so contemporary.
Not so contemporary, but I do also listen to that kind of stuff. And it's you gotta make a joyful noise to the Lord and sing to the Lord a new song, all that kind of stuff. I'm 100% behind that. There's something to be had in all genres of music. And I think just in the sense of like someone who's like, well, I prefer contemporary, I think you're missing out on something if you don't try a more traditional thing, and vice versa. Yeah. If you don't try a traditional more type of thing, you don't see the fullness of everything.
Right.
If you're like, well, I'm going to listen to traditional stuff. Well, I don't like that contemporary thing. You're missing out.
Right.
You're missing out, because that's not the completeness of it, of what we have. I mean, I've listened to full-on rock songs that are getting close to like almost like screaming, which not necessarily my preferred genre, but they're doing good work and they're reaching people who enjoy that type of music. Yeah. So yeah, I think that there have been even pieces that we've done in the choir that cross over in the contemporary service. Okay. We've done stuff like that. I will say in general, it's you get less of that because, again, not to get too much into the music theory of everything, a lot of contemporary music is very simple, harmonically speaking. I've had some fun revoicing things and doing stuff with contemporary stuff, but the thing is it's really hard to write choral music for that, because it's actually, in some senses, a very old style, our contemporary music. And I would even argue it's very similar to how music was done in the medieval time period, which, some people might find that odd and like, isn't that plain chant and like, that kind of thing. Right. Sure. But there's a lot of improvisation back then. And really what they would do is they'd lay a bass line and have very simple stuff going on underneath with a melody that was much more complex on top. And I mean, everybody loves the melody for O Come, Emmanuel. I've never heard a single person who hasn't liked that melody. That has been around since the medieval time period. So if you like that melody, there's something for you back then. And, it's funny, you're doing something that they did back then in the contemporary service.
Interesting.
So.
Okay. Yeah. And, we could go round and round and round on these conversations of traditional and contemporary and, the danger of equating one with antiquated versus, repetitive and these kinds of things. Sure, there are bad examples in both camps, but yeah, I think I appreciate what you're saying, Tayler, just of that you really are missing out. And there's nothing wrong to have some preferences, but you're missing out on the full offering of styles of music and what can be communicated in those. Yeah. Well, as we think about the ministry of the choir here a little bit, for those of maybe from our church family who've never been a part of a choir or don't know much about our choir's ministry, Tayler, could you tell us a little bit about what does a typical choir practice on a Tuesday night here? What does it look like? And again, what would you say to somebody that says, "Boy, I'm kind of curious. I might be willing to come check that out."
Sure. Well, this is good timing in some senses because we are working on our cantata coming up here. Basically, that it's a collection of music where we have 8 pieces that we're going to do for a special service. And we put that at the front of our rehearsal because we want to make sure that we get that done first. So if you were like, hey, I just want to try it out for the winter season, see how it goes.
Right.
You can certainly come in for that first half of rehearsal, which starts at 7:15. And then we do about a half hour of that, and then we go into the back half, which is to work on our stuff for Sundays or however that goes. Mm-hmm. But as far as the structure of rehearsal, like I said, we start with the cantata first. There's been some structural changes from when Ken has done it. We actually shortened the time period, which is very challenging for us, me and Ian, and just to make sure that we keep that train chugging along. Because there's a lot to get done. We do really a lot of times, a lot of the pieces that we do on Sunday, we've only done twice. So
you practice them twice.
We practice them twice.
Third time is,
and the third time is when we. So there's a lot that needs to get done, and to make people feel comfortable with it in that time period. So basically, we start with the cantata. We do that. Prior to that is warm-ups. Obviously, you want to make sure that things are working out. I mean, in some sense, it's kind of like a mini vocal lesson for the entire choir.
Okay.
Because, like I said, we have varying levels of experience. So we're trying to basically communicate stuff that you're going to need for the piece coming up. That's my challenge, is to make those warm-ups relatable.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because again, your voice is probably pretty warm by 7:15. I mean, unless you wake up at 6 p.m.
You've had all day to
keep your voice
those vocal cords.
It has nothing to do with getting you warm. It has everything to do with getting you in the proper space to make sound correctly.
Okay.
So you do that, and then we go into the cantata, and then we go. How many times am I going to say cantata?
I'm going to come back to that in a minute.
Right. Yeah. So, and then we'll go into that back half, doing whatever our anthem's going to be. If it's the week before, we'll go over what we're doing for hymns and stuff. And then at the end of rehearsal, we'll do a 10-minute devotional and have time for prayer and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're ever in the building on a Tuesday evening, peek in and eavesdrop in on what's going on in the sanctuary there. Yeah, Tayler, you mentioned the cantata. I was going to ask you about that. First of all, what does the word cantata mean?
Well, I mean, it comes from Latin, I think. Well, anyway, I always get Latin and Italian mixed up in my head, but it means to sing.
Okay.
Basically a cantata is usually in a sacred sense. Like if you want to go down a rabbit hole, look up some Bach cantatas. That'll be quite, you'll get a lot of stuff. But it basically takes you through some sort of narrative usually as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so a cantata itself is very, usually it's for a special occasion, especially nowadays. Nowadays, we usually do it for like Easter, Christmas, and you go through the Easter story or the resurrection or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not just 8 pieces of music back to back to back to back, that it's telling some kind of a story. These are connected together. It's obviously we do, as you just mentioned, we're doing this for the Christmas season, the Advent season. We've done an Easter cantata before. So it's kind of a seasonal thing. It's meant to tell a story, to tell the the Christmas story there.
It's related a lot to oratorio in that sense. Like everybody knows Handel's Messiah, for instance. That's a big oratorio. That, you know, one might call it a banger. Okay. Anyway.
Well, that'll be coming up here. I don't mean to scare you, Tayler, but that's less than a month away. Yeah. It's that's going to actually be at one of our 9:30 combined worship services this December 15th. And you want to give us a little sneak peek on what is the cantata for this year? What's it called? Maybe what can we expect from what we're going to hear in this one?
Well, again, it goes through basically our the birth of Jesus and his life and stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give too much away on it.
Okay, well, no spoilers. Okay.
Yeah, no spoilers here, but there's some really fun stuff in there. A lot of times, like, it goes through multiple genres of music. Like, there's some stuff that have more of a swing to it, and some stuff that's more contemplative and stuff like that. There's a lot of different moods in it, and I mean, it opens basically with the march type piece and ends the exact same way. It's kind of poetic that way. So it's like the king returning in both senses. So,
okay.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it. Good.
Yeah.
Well, outside of the selections for the cantata, Tayler, do you have a favorite Christmas hymn, a particular song that maybe every December you look forward to singing? Do you have a favorite?
You know, it's kind of funny. It's not even technically sacred, but it's In the Bleak Midwinter.
Okay.
I love that one, especially the version composed by Gustav Holst. Mm-hmm. It's just, I mean, in Minnesota, it's relatable. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I want to go back a little bit. So let's say after December, after the cantata season is over, and you're back to selecting music for a choir Sunday. Tayler, what's the process of finding that next piece and selecting that next piece, and how do you know it's going to be a good fit for a particular Sunday or even for the members of our choir? How do you select your pieces?
Sure. So at the beginning of the year, it was kind of like, oh, well, shoot, this is a fast transition. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Yeah. So we actually selected one that we had done with Ken, so that the choir had experience with it. They had to learn what our little quirks were and make sure that.
But pull from the greatest hits catalog.
Yeah. You know, that was the idea. And really, what it comes down to is we really want to try and connect whatever the anthem is to what the message is going to be.
Okay.
So that's on you. You have to, it's on our pastors to talk to us about that, which they're really good about.
We try at least. Yeah. We try to let you know where we're going, and sometimes we change our mind at the last minute.
And that's fine. You know, like we have other pieces that are more generalized for those purposes.
Yeah. But as long as you're singing about Jesus, I think it's going to be safe on a Sunday.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Yeah. No, I honestly, and every conductor or performer or anybody, like, we all have our own like internal catalog of things we've done in the past. Yeah. Like, there's this one piece I did when I was in high school. It's called Alleluia. Like, you know, a million other pieces, but it's a very beautiful piece. And I talked to Laura like before we had even really come into the season. I was like, we're doing that one. I was like, we were doing that one. And that's one piece that I know is going to be a little bit bigger for the choir, and it splits in some spots. It's a little more ambitious. So we're giving ourselves some time to learn that one. It's not so simple.
Okay.
So, lots of fun though. All it says is Alleluia, but we got a lot of other things that are more complicated than the music.
Okay.
But that's a big thing. If you can generally, especially with our pieces that are more like an Alleluia, you know, if you can inspire somebody to see the glory of God through it, that's a big thing. You know, if you can really create that space for you to worship, that's what the aim is for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that really leads into something I wanted to ask you. Back in episode 5 of this podcast, I sat down with Jason Roebuck, who is our 1045 music director, and I asked him a very similar question just about the role of worship music in discipling people. I had asked him about, well, how does the music we select for our contemporary service not just fill in, give us songs to sing on Sunday morning, but lead toward, contribute to discipleship. So I want to ask you the same question, Tayler. How do you see that our choir ministry and the songs that you select contributes to our growth in Christ, our discipleship?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, just like in contemporary music, one big thing that we get as an advantage when it's a vocalized medium is you have words. It's a very big advantage. So really looking at what the message is of the piece itself is very interesting. Like I said, music accentuates the emotion of what's being said.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's what it's called is text painting. So if you look at what's happening in the music, it'll be like in a minor key or a major key when it's sad or happy. That's pretty obvious one. But even stuff like you raise me up, you know, like that. That's painting the line. It's going up, right? So there are some things like that where you can really accentuate the message of a song and really invoke the feeling of the words themselves, the poetry. I mean, in some cases, it's literally scripture itself.
Yeah.
I mean, every time we're in Luke, I have Handel's Messiah going off in my head.
Me too. Yep. I talked about that this past Sunday. Yeah.
Every time I'm just like, oh, yeah. So that's like, for unto us a child is born. You know, they go all over the place. And every time I hear that, it's like, it's repetition, and repetition is a very important thing.
Yeah,
in that sense. I mean, I'm in this room right here. We have shapes that are repeating over and over and over and over again. They're like fractal designs, and there's a lot of that in the design of the universe, and it communicates who God is. Yeah, you know, and giving ourselves the ability to do so in an entertaining way is even better. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
So it's really cool to emphasize the message of what's being said through music in that sense.
Yeah. I find that so many times, even this past Sunday, whether it's a hymn that we sang together or a choral piece or a worship song from our contemporary service, you know, by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that song is still in my head, and not just the tune, but I find myself rehearsing those words again. And whether it's quoting from scripture or it's teaching something more theological, there is a power to it in music that just keeps on instructing us all week long. And so we'll have to, as we listen to these pieces, whether it's the cantata or one of the other choir anthems, to just listen carefully to what is being sung, not just how it's being sung.
Yes.
Well, Tayler, it's been fun to kind of talk through these questions about our choir's ministry and your role as one of the directors of our choir. But at the end of every one of these episodes, I like to ask another question that isn't directly related to this topic that we've been talking about. You know that here at E-Free Bemidji, we frequently talk about becoming deeply devoted followers of Jesus together. Tayler, what's one thing that you have been blessed by lately that is deepening your devotion to Jesus?
I went to an apologetics conference recently with some of our youth, which was a lot of fun. Oddly enough, that conference didn't only go over apologetics, but it talked a lot about our identity with Christ. And I think it helped me recenter what it is I'm doing and why I'm doing it. and to not. I remember when I was in college, I had a very specific moment when I was talking with a good friend of mine who's a Mennonite, and I just absolutely love him to death. I asked him a question once. Why don't you audition for the operas? Like, why wouldn't you do that? He was a good singer. I'm glad he didn't audition, because then I would have gotten some roles. No, I was just kidding. But his honest answer to that was, because if I auditioned for it, I knew it wouldn't be about God. It would be about me. And then I realized in that moment, as somebody who was a follower of Christ, that I was making everything about me. And that's why I was always so nervous during auditions and doing all that, because my identity was so focused on being perfect, being a perfect singer, doing everything absolutely right. And if I couldn't do that, I was a failure. And it was horrible. It was very torturous, because then the thing I loved the most became the thing I hated. I actually, I remember going through my senior recital, which was supposed to happen when COVID happened. But I had ended up hating that entire recital so much I didn't look at that music for a whole year afterwards, because it just became too much of a cage to be in. So to look at that and be like, hey, this is about God. It's not about you.
Yeah.
And God gave you the things to do it correctly, the way he would like it. It's kind of like when David says, hey, I'm going to build you a house, God. And God's like, did I say I needed one?
Right. Right.
You know, because that's a big thing. You are what God wants you to be. And if you're seeking him and you are following the instruction manual, as it were, you'll be where you need to be.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big thing that I rediscovered at that conference. So.
Yeah. So you go as a youth leader, as a chaperone for their conference,
Yes.
hoping that they get something out of it, and lo and behold, you get something out of it as well. So yeah, I'm so grateful that you guys got to take those guys down, the students down to a conference like that, and yeah, hopefully they're thinking through those things as well. I mean, what an important question to be thinking through, especially in our culture and our day to day, is that question of our identity. And what does it mean to have our identity rooted in Christ and not something else? Well, Tayler, this has been great, and I look forward to maybe a future episode. We'll delve maybe deeper into the apologetics side of things.
Sounds like fun.
That might be like a 2-hour episode if I know Tayler well enough. But yeah, this has been great, and then we'll talk to Ian as well. All right, we're going to go with part 2 of this episode here. And now with me in the deeply devoted podcast studio here at E-Free Bemidji is Ian Trosen. Ian is the other side of the two-headed monster of our choir co-director. So Ian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We want to get to know you as well. We talked with your co-director, Tayler, a little bit. Probably going to ask you some of the same questions, but we'll just sort of see where our dialogue goes. But Ian, let's just start with, how long have you been in the Bemidji area? What brought you to this part of northern Minnesota?
Well, I could definitely tell you that what brought me here to this part of the state was the university originally. Back in 2017, I transferred in from Crown College, which may be a familiar sounding name to quite a few of your listeners probably. I've already made that connection with a few people here in the church. But the simple story there would be that the music department over at Crown College back in 2016, 2017, they were like, hey, so the money hasn't really been allocated well, maybe not properly is the right word, but the money hasn't really been allocated. And so we're going to be discontinuing the music degree, like the classical side. The worship arts, I believe, is still there for like worship teams to keep doing their thing, because Crown College is mainly known as a like a Bible and theology kind of college. But they do have sports, and and I believe they are still investing money in sports. But anyway, we'll let you can finish your degree, but we'll be substituting classes, and so that didn't sound very good because we're paying a pretty price for a private college education. So some of my fellow peers and we started looking around, applying to a few schools, but we applied to BSU, and we noticed that it was pretty distant from the cities, and so, hey, maybe we should look into that. We auditioned, and a few of us got some pretty decent scholarships. So 2017 to 2019, I wrapped up my college time over there, and got a really, really solid experience with a particular vocal coach there, and the whole department was great. But after my time there was done, I just kind of stayed in the area, just started working, not really using my like the music degree or anything like that, but I thought the Bemidji area was nice, and so we've been here ever since.
And so what was your degree in at BSU? What did you graduate with?
So I got a Bachelor of Arts in Music with an emphasis in vocal performance.
Okay.
So we're doing choir directing now, but a part of the coursework that we did was conducting, and we also did vocal pedagogy and stuff like that. And so there's definitely at least some groundwork laid there for choir directing and being able to at least get like a basic job done, that kind of thing.
So you can teach people to sing. That's a skill you've got in your back pocket.
Absolutely.
Even someone like me that's probably has zero range and can only just kind of stick to the melody.
There's hope for everybody.
Okay.
Even
all right.
you, Eric.
Well, we'll find out about that. But yeah. Well, obviously you've got a love for music. I'm going to guess that goes back a ways. Ian, tell us a little bit just about how the Lord led you to pursue music, not just as a career, but just your love for music.
Well, I can definitely say that my family growing up was a huge influence on that, because my mom and dad can sing, and they can sing really well, and both my sisters can sing. I think I'm the only one who's gotten like a solid education in music, and specifically singing, vocal training specifically. But that's really where it started, just singing as a family. Because where I grew up, we had very close family friends. Well, I should say like friends of our families being friends, that kind of thing. And we as groups of families wrote songs together, and so we would sing songs as families and just as groups of believers and stuff. And also, I think one of the biggest influencers musically was I'm guessing you're familiar with the movie The Prince of Egypt, right?
Yeah. Okay.
The animated movie.
Yes, one of my oldest daughter Evelyn. That is one of her absolute favorite movies. So yeah.
Yes, specifically the music from that is very good. We as a family we would play that soundtrack a lot and just sing along with it. Just a little note there. It's just like how these little particular things can be really influential. So. The Lord, I think, as I don't want to say like He's definitely given a gift, but other people have said like Ian, I think that God's given you a gift here, and so I don't want to use it doing things for that like give me glory. Like I want to do things that like point glory to Him and stuff like that. Even doing the secular productions like the operas and the little musicals that I've done in college, I've always tried to just remind myself, hey, glory to God. It's not me. It's gifts from Him and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I would echo those that say it seems like maybe the Lord's given you a musical gift. It just even not only at our more traditional service, but Ian steps in on all kinds of instruments at the second service, and I find myself a couple of times going, "Oh, I didn't know Ian knew how to play the drums. Oh, I didn't know that Ian knew how to play the bass."
The drum specifically was like, "Hey," Jason was, "Hey, can you play drums?" I'm like, "I can figure it out, I think."
Yeah, so you must be fairly musically inclined, and can keep a beat and all those kinds of things. And you've
got
a tremendous servant's heart in the area of music ministry.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Speaking about people that have a servant heart in music ministry, as I was talking with Tayler, we reflected a little bit about our longtime choir director, Ken Wold, and his retirement from that role as our choir director here at our church, and just how even in the last year we've got to really celebrate that and celebrate him and glorify God for the ministry that he's done. But you had a little bit of overlap. You had some time in our choir with Mr. Wold or under Mr. Wold's leadership. Ian, do you have a couple of things that you'd say, boy, these are some things that I've really appreciated about his leadership, maybe even some things that you learned in those couple of years singing under Mr. Wold?
Well, as far as the first thing that came to mind as soon as you asked that was being trained in a secular environment. Starting a choir rehearsal back in college or starting a voice lesson, we never prayed, and so that was never really. It kind of stands out.
Yeah.
And so having Ken always start the rehearsals with a devotional and like a prayer time and stuff, I would very much appreciate that, because my mindset from the secular world is that, like, hey, we gotta hit the grind hard, we gotta warm up and time out our rehearsals very, very particularly.
We're here to practice.
We're here to practice,
yeah.
And there's no time for anything else. But really, we're there to praise the Lord with our voices and stuff. So, like, having that emphasis of Ken always starting. Actually, hold on. I think he actually ends. He ended the rehearsals with the devotional and prayer time. That's how we usually always ended. But continuing that on, we needed to make sure that we need to have that, even if it's at the beginning or in the middle of our rehearsal. We gotta try to have that. And make that a priority.
And I've heard from a number of folks that have served and are currently serving in our choir ministry that, and part of that just seems that group isn't just there to prepare the next Sunday's piece of music, that it's a little bit of a community that comes together, and you spend that much time together, you do start to care for one another and want to pray with one another.
Yes.
And yeah.
And I think the only other thing that that comes to mind right now is Ken's. I remember he would, before rehearsals would start, he would always just be chatting with everybody and would always just be conversing and checking in with people if he remembers a detail that someone mentioned about what's happening in their life a week or 2 weeks ago. He would always ask about that, and try to be remain as relational as he could.
Yeah. So not just in that director role, but really kind of in that shepherding role.
And being a fellow brother in Christ.
Yeah. Well, now it's you and Tayler who are. I guess you're each trying to fill in a shoe there, and
one shoe, yeah, exactly.
And so you've stepped into this co-choir director role, even as you and Tayler have talked about it, and now that you're into this season of ministry. Ian, how would you describe kind of your vision for this ministry of choir at our church?
The vision of ministry involving the choir. Well, whatever we do, whatever songs we sing on Sundays, I'd say just we have to make sure that God gets the glory, and it points directly to Him, His Word, and His promises, just everything about the Lord. That's kind of how I see it, and it's a bit difficult for me to envision it being like an outreach or like like an outreaching kind of thing.
Yeah,
but, because Tayler is much better at like recruiting people, getting them to come to and try choir out and stuff like that. But that's definitely something that I do think I need to work on for sure. Just getting the word out. Hey, we have a choir. Do you want to come give it a try? Even if I don't really know. If this particular person, if I've heard them. One thing that Ken often did was he would be like standing at the front, and if he heard someone behind him like that was generally sounding pretty good or decent, that kind of he would go and talk to him. Yeah. I need to get better at that, I think. Yeah. But It as a ministry. Well, for one thing, I think it's still one of those parts of our services that people really enjoy.
Yeah.
And
yes.
and that people are seeing that that the music is being communicated effectively by our singers, even if most of our singers are not trained really in any way, but the message is there,
Yeah.
and they're trying to communicate that. Even and let me also say that during rehearsals, oftentimes we're focusing on like the notes, trying to get them right. But when Sunday actually comes, when the time comes to sing for the congregation and for the Lord, like those are the moments where the message of the music really shines through, and that's where we're starting to think about what we're singing. We should be thinking about that in rehearsal as well, but it's at least encouraging that that the music and the words and the text are really starting to come out when we're up in front of our congregation, and I can see it on their faces whenever I conduct.
Yeah, that final product, if you want. I don't know. There's probably a better way to say that, and I've seen a little bit of that myself. I mean, it's been years. When I was growing up in the church, we had kind of a youth choir that I was involved with, and so I've had a little bit of experience there, but I've had more experience in kind of more of a contemporary worship setting. Yeah. But there is that moment, on a Sunday morning when you sort of just lose yourself in the piece, and you are not the performer anymore or the leader. You are as much engaged in corporate worship as the person sitting on the other side that's either listening to the piece or singing along or something like that. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to kind of just get lost in the music or the piece there, and really move into a spirit of worship. I would think that's a challenge though, Ian. Again, if I try to make the analogy to more of a contemporary style, I can go and I can see, okay, what music is out there these days? What are people, other churches singing? What can I find online on Spotify? And we should do this song next Sunday. Ian, how do you find choral music for Sunday morning for the choir? How do you go about going from thinking about what you might want to do to selection to then the final performance before the congregation?
Well, I think I would say that right now our process is still a bit of a work in progress. Yeah. Figuring out how best to go about it. For right now, at this point in our leadership of the choir, we're trying to find pieces that are the most accessible and the pieces that are not too complicated for all the parts of the choir to try to fit together. We're trying to find more pieces that have all the sections of the choir, the tenors, altos, sopranos, basses, singing similar parts or the same part, like singing melodies together. Okay. Versus all parts that are clashing. So luckily our choir library is pretty extensive. Yes. So there's no shortage of music that we can use. It's just going through it for right now and finding the pieces that either we've done in either the previous year or the past 2 or 3 years. Okay. Doing some familiar pieces again. Yeah. In the contemporary services it seems like we constantly have like a recurring list of songs that we do pretty frequently. Right. It's kind of like that with the choir, but I hope that in the future our selection process will be a lot more closely related to the pastoral staff, yourself, and Pastor Jerry, and finding out what. Hopefully. That also is. There's also a caveat there that we'll know, really maybe we won't know really far in advance, like three months in advance, what the message will be. But as far in advance as we can possibly know, then hopefully we can find music that will either that will match the tone or the theme of the sermons and stuff. Right. And if not that, then we could choose like a range of themes, and then we can plan out how how those fit, depending on when we find out what the upcoming sermons will be about. You know what I mean?
Right. A little bit easier when you get to Easter or Christmas
Absolutely.
and things like that. It's a you have a better target of where we're going, and that's even the season that we're coming into now. Here is we're late November or almost to Thanksgiving, believe it or not, and we're going to be in the Advent season here before we know it. I was talking with Taylor a little bit about the Christmas cantata. I quizzed him and I asked him, what does even the word cantata mean? That's not a word that we use that much. What's your definition there, Ian, of what is a cantata?
Well, cantata, I don't quite remember what the actual definition is, unfortunately, but I do know that it has to do with text and putting that text to music. I mean, you could say that about a lot, any song really, but it's specifically, I believe it has to do with text that already exists.
Okay.
And putting it to music. I think that's the general area.
That
of what we're
works for me. I wouldn't know any different anyway. But that's a tradition around here. Annually to have a Christmas cantata and sometimes even an Easter cantata. Now, Taylor wouldn't give us any real preview. He really wanted to keep it quiet about what to expect. So I won't press you to tell us what are all the selections for this year's cantata. But
Gotcha.
what are you looking forward to when we get to that? That's coming up December 15th. What do you look forward to when you have a morning like that where you don't have just the one choir anthem? You've got a bunch of them. What is that like from your perspective?
Well, I am particularly excited because there should be a lot of familiar songs in there. Well, at least maybe not familiar songs, but familiar music within those songs.
Okay.
Because I don't think that would necessarily be spoiling anything. But like the composer selected some specific Christmas hymns, Christmas carols to put into it, and so those will pop up, and then. For those with a keen ear, we'll be able to.
So we'll hear some of those
them.
melodies and go, that's this song, yeah.
Melodies, but actually, I'm sorry. Maybe that won't. It wouldn't be only the people with keen ears, but like you'll hear Christmas carols in there.
Okay.
And they're mixed in, and it's all put into one. It should be pretty great, I think.
Yeah. Kind of in that same ballpark of choosing our music and things like that. Again, as I had been talking with Taylor about this, we did an episode of this podcast early on, episode 5. I talked with Jason Robeck, who serves as our 1045 music director, and you've alluded a little bit to this, Ian. But just how do you see the role of music, worship music, whether it's traditional or contemporary? How do you see that contributing toward discipleship? We talk a lot in our church about discipleship. And that can be kind of a Christian buzzword, but how does that music ministry contribute toward discipleship?
Well, I've always seen music as a universal language, and across cultures, music is everywhere, and it's one of those ideas or one of those acts, I suppose. You might think of doing music as an act. It's a universal thing, and so really using music, and specifically sacred music that we sing, or our contemporary music, as long as it's I suppose maybe it's worth pointing out that as long as the music is doctrinal and doctrinally accurate, I suppose maybe might be the right phrase to use there. That in itself can be a tool to reach into people's lives, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a teaching tool. It can be a teaching tool. Yeah.
Definitely a teaching tool, a tool to just build relationships. Singing together is, I've always seen singing together as like a thing of value. Whenever in my own family, that's what I want to see in the future. Like we need to be singing together. Yeah. Not just studying scripture together, but we need to be singing together, and yeah.
I like how you say that, just that idea of music as being kind of a universal language. And yet it's so interesting, at least in our culture, Sunday morning worship is about the only context in our culture where groups of people get together and sing together. Maybe a concert, your favorite rock band or something, and you're singing along with your favorite artist. But that feels very different from
it does
corporate worship. And there really isn't anything like it. But I think you're right, and it really does come out at Christmas time. People love to sing these songs.
Christmas carols, there's a reason that like groups still do like group caroling, like they go around and stuff. That's very fun. It can be challenging with our winters sometimes because they can get cold.
You got to be brave to do it here.
Yeah, you got to dress really well and keep your entire vocal mechanism warm and lubricated and stuff like that. But physical activities, concerts. That was the only other thing that came to mind as soon as you started saying like there's no other. It's like it's a singing together on Sundays is a unique experience. But concerts, that doesn't seem like it would be really accurate unless it's a concert that where everyone's attending a concert for like a worship band.
Yeah, correct.
Maybe that could be comparable, but singing together, like that's really, it really only is unique like that on a Sunday morning. Yeah. I would have to agree, I think.
Yeah. And then just even thinking through these Christmas carols, on the one hand, I always felt that it's difficult in December to choose some of these because you feel like you sing the same songs every year, and yet that's a very positive thing. Is those are the songs that people want to sing. We want to sing "Joy to the World." We want to sing "O Come All Ye Faithful." Ian, do you have a favorite Christmas hymn, or what's the one that you can't wait to sing this season?
I think as far as like a bigger and bombastic piece, I think "Angels We Have Heard on High" is fantastic. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I think I was thinking of the wrong one. "Hark the Herald Angels Sing." Okay. That one is amazing. Always so fun to sing, especially in like a congregational setting. But if you were asking like what's like a big piece or like what's a quieter, more contemplative piece, I think the what is it? Silent Night. That one's always so fun to sing, especially in German. If you ever get a chance to sing it in German. But yeah, that comes with like a requisite. No, not really a requisite, but like you'd probably want to like.
You better
learn the words
it,
and pronounce the words. That might be the most rewarding for like the layman or something like that. But that's what's that one song? The Cradle song. Do you? Away in a Manger. I believe that's what it is. Okay. Away in a manger instead of away in a manger, no crib for a bed. It's like it's the same music basically, but it's just the melody's a bit different. Away in a manger, no crib for a bed. Like that one. Yeah, that one is really nice, and when done well with 4 parts, it's just very, very. I want to say like it feels very intimate. Like an intimate kind of setting where if a bunch of people are singing that in choral style with in parts and stuff, and it gets to be very emotionally engaging. Those pieces. Like Silent Night. Yeah. Have you ever just a quick question? Have you ever sung Silent Night at the end of a Christmas Eve service where they bring the lights down and everyone has those candles? Yeah, it's so special.
There is, and it's funny. It's whether it's here at our church or I remember that vividly from growing up in our church. Part of that I have a fond memory of that because in our church growing up we had real candles.
Yeah, us too.
And there was that age that you got to, whether it's 8, 10, 12 or whatever, you finally were mature enough to hold your own candle with the little piece of paper around it so the wax didn't drip down your hand. But but there is something, there's certainly a little bit of nostalgia there. There's some sentimentality there. But just that there is something simple about being able to sing those things in that kind of more intimate setting. Yeah. Now, not every Christmas song that we're going to hear this season out in the world is a sacred Christmas song. So,
very true.
Ian, what's your favorite non-sacred, non-Christian, you know what I'm saying? Kind of Christmas song. What's your sort of guilty pleasure Christmas song that you look forward to?
Mariah Carey's I'm just kidding. No, it's not that. It's not that, because there's a meme that goes around. It's like, oh no, it's starting. The season for All I Want for Christmas by Mariah Carey is starting. Oh no, no, not that piece. Oh man, a non-sacred or / Christian Christmas piece.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember, because like most of my favorite pieces are the Christian and sacred music. Yeah. Let me see. Maybe the 12 Days of Christmas. I've always found fun to sing. Mm-hmm. Maybe I might have to say it's the 12 Days of Christmas. Pretty fun. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay, that's a good answer. Yeah.
But mostly because I can't quite think of all of them.
So many of them are Christmas carols that are just covered by other artists.
True.
I think for me, there are two pieces of music that I look forward to every time this year. Mm-hmm. It's the Charlie Brown Christmas soundtrack and the soundtrack to Home Alone.
Oh,
I mean,
Home Alone.
You can't get better than that. The one, because the Charlie Brown soundtrack, I mean, that's just some of the best jazz there is, Christmas jazz there is.
Yeah, and it's funny how there's no text to that. I believe it's the one we're thinking of, the same one, right? It's like that piece of music is associated with Christmas.
Yes,
even though there's no text to it. There's nothing like that, but just because of the association.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. It's a lot of fun there. Yeah.
It really is. Oh yeah, and Home Alone, that's another one of John Williams' amazing compositions, because like he really nails the Christmas feel.
Yes.
With some of those songs. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's good. I mean, we'll get into the Christmas music here pretty soon, and then probably not too long after that, we'll be sick and tired of it for listening to it.
That's usually how it goes.
A month and a half there. But, well, Ian, I want to ask one more question here before we wrap up. And what I like to do on this podcast is, at the end of every episode, I like to ask this question that really doesn't relate to the topic. Maybe it will, but the question is this. Here at our church, we are frequently talking about becoming deeply devoted followers of Jesus together. And I find it really interesting to ask different people this question. Ian, what's one thing that you have been blessed by lately that is deepening your devotion to Jesus? Maybe it's a piece of music, maybe it's a book you're reading, or a sermon you heard, or a conversation you had with a friend. Just one thing more recently that you've been blessed by that is you find is deepening your devotion to Jesus.
I think I would have to say consistently having prayer time with my wife, Kate, at the end of every day. That's, I think, been one of those things that's been really helping to, just keep close to the Lord, even though very often I do find it difficult to find time to be in the Word every single day. Unfortunately, there may be a few days that in a row that go without being in the Word and stuff. But it's just I am just people. I'm still maybe considered a newlywed.
You are,
yeah. But when people were asking how's married life, I am confident in saying that married life is definitely for me, and I think that marriage is just a wonderful blessing, directly from the Lord, and having that prayer time, even if it's really short, really or long, or if I accidentally doze off just a little bit in the middle of my own prayer or something, oops. That's been really, really wonderful. Just keeping close to the Lord that way.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we're big fans of Kate around here. Kate served as our office manager for a couple of years, and it was always fun to chat with her in the office, and always still fun to catch her and catch up a little bit. So, Kate, if you're listening, we're going to get you on this podcast here someday and hear a little bit about your story. And so, if Ian can do it, you can do it. So, but Ian, this has been great. Thanks for taking time to come and to share with really our church family a little bit about who you are and about the ministry of the choir. And so the choir is not closed, right? I mean, so if anybody says, hey, I'd like to give that a shot, they could talk to either you or Tayler and say, tell me what I need to know.
Yeah. When do you guys meet? Yeah, you could definitely you could talk to myself, Tayler, or even Laura Engelstad or Tammy Wilson.
Yeah.
Tammy is our one of our wonderful altos, and she is ready to step in just in case Tayler or I can't make it to a rehearsal because of some reason or something like that.
She's your understudy.
I suppose you could say that. But no, we're just wonderful. It's wonderful having like a support system here of having two co-directors just in case one can't make it, because I believe there's off the top by the count of a hand on a hand, I think there's been 2 times that one of us couldn't make it and the other immediately took over, and it was great. And we didn't have to cancel rehearsal or anything like that. And then Laura being a fantastic pianist for us.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anyone is interested in just singing communally with the choir and blessing the congregation, our church family that way, like, we'd love to talk with you and love to have you. We rehearse on Tuesdays at 7:15.
Yeah. Even last year, Mr. Wold kind of gently twisted my arm and got me in there for one song, and
one rehearsal.
Working with the choir is a lot of fun. So
it can we do have a good time, I think.
Yeah, I would concur. So, well, thanks, Ian, for being on this episode, and we'll wrap it up there. But that'll do it for episode 13 of the Deeply Devoted podcast. Again, we would love to hear from you as listeners, just some feedback about the podcast. You can reach out via email, send an email to podcast@efcbemidji.org. Let us know your thoughts, your comments, your questions, even suggestions for future topics or folks that I should try to convince to be on this podcast. But once again, every Tuesday we have a new episode, and we'll have one for next week. Thanks for listening.